Hello everyone and welcome once again to the Cardinals Nest here on HBC Channel 25. Dean Beckman along with St. Mary's Sports Information Director Donny Nadeau here to talk St. Mary's athletics on the show devoted exclusively to St. Mary's University here on HBC. And Donny, later on in the program, will bring in Terry Mannor, the head women's hockey coach for the Cardinals, along with Sarah Gustafson, a sophomore goaltender, back for her second season with the Cardinals. Hockey action already getting started, which we'll talk about later on in the program.
Yeah, winter seasons are just about in full swing. Basketballs will start up in a couple of weeks, and hockey got done this past week. And Coach Mannor was mentioning, well, I couldn't hear him because he keeps saying that he's got laryngitis, so I'm sure he's a little nervous to come on. Terry isn't a big fan of being in the spotlight, so I like to put him in the spotlight once in a while. So it'll be fun to talk hockey with him and get his feel for this first weekend. They had the Foresters this weekend, and so just to see where he thinks the team is at as they really kick things off right away, full swing.
Well, I tell you, with these studio lights, easy to put him in the spotlight, Donny. So we'll do that later on in the interview segment of our program. Both Terry and Sarah will be joining us. But first, let's talk about the past week here in Cardinals athletics. And Donny, will begin with the closeout of the fall sports season. Several sports teams closing things out for the Cardinals this past weekend. Volleyball being one of them. We had Mike Lester on the program last week, and at that time they had 2 more games to be played. They won that first one the day that we taped on Wednesday, and then ended up losing their final game over the weekend.
Yeah, I talked to Coach Lester after the Gustavus match, and it was obviously not the way that they wanted to finish. It's always nice to end your season with a victory, but he was pretty pleased with the performance of the team in general. You look at a squad that they had with just the 2 seniors, one of which Amy Kuyak we talked about didn't play virtually the entire season because of an injury. So very young team, a lot of learning that went on, and to finish 17-14, I think that. Because of the loss of Amy, I think that Coach Lester was satisfied with that as a final record. Certainly they had higher aspirations in conference play than a 3-8 mark. But again, when you're talking about a team that's that without Amy was comprised of virtually all sophomores and freshmen, it's pretty solid to finish 17-14.
Right. Well, and in fairness to Mike and that program, you look at the year that they had previously, going all the way to the National Division III tournament, and then graduating so many of those players. Of course, expectations were high based on previous year's record and postseason appearance, but in all reality, given the new influx of players coming in, those kinds of expectations were probably a little bit too high.
Yeah, and when you look at how they finished, and you look at the leaders that they had, when one of them, again, you talk about an Amy Kuyak who is such a leader, not only off the court but on the court, and then when her presence isn't there, it certainly changes the dynamic of that team. And her and Erica Hurley were great senior leaders. They both graduate now, and Coach Lester's got to look ahead to next year. And when you start looking ahead to 2012, and you've got somebody like Kara Grant, who had 462 kills this year, that's the 3rd highest single season performance all time in the program history, and she's only a freshman. So you've got her, you've got Mary Nordic, and we talk a lot about Lexi Asimos as the setter, and Lexi had over 1,000 assists this year, and you forget that she's only a sophomore, so she's got 2 years yet to play. So there are a lot of freshmen on the team, a lot of sophomores on the team. You've got Tara Rasmussen as a junior, libero, who was hurt for the last 4 or 5 matches. So there's a lot of youth there and a lot of experience. So as we start getting ahead to looking at next year, I think the future is certainly bright, and Coach Lester's got to be looking pretty positive as he heads into 2012.
Yeah, clearly the focus next year will have to be on those conference teams, many of which are ranked, and so that's part of the problem being in the MIAC conference. But, they were able to handle that the year before, and now with this year's experience under their belt for the younger players, clearly the focus next year will be on those conference games, because non-conference, they dominated.
Yeah, and I think Coach Lester will be the first to tell you that, the year under their belt is going to be so huge. When you look back 4 years, when the big senior class that graduated after last year, when they were freshmen, they finished about where this team finished in terms of overall record and conference record. It's that 1 year of experience and kind of getting the adjustment from high school and club volleyball to playing in the MIAC. And like you said, you've got a conference that is so incredibly difficult. You know, St. Mary's went a stretch of 4 straight matches where they played the league leader. You know, you've got St. Thomas, you've got St. Benedict, you've got Concordia, you've got Bethel, all of which were battling for that #1 spot. And when we played them, they were all in first place. So you've got you've got some very, very talented teams in the conference. And when your team is really freshmen and sophomores, it's a big learning experience, and I think that 1 year under their belt, you look at next year, I think you're going to find a completely different team.
Right.
And I think that Coach Lester is hoping, it's going to sound funny, but he's probably hoping that Kara does not have 462 kills next year, because that means that they're able to spread things out a little bit and utilize some of their other talents.
Right,
so
right.
Next year is going to be a completely different year, and I know Mike's already going to be out recruiting and trying to get even better. So. He's certainly not going to stand pat on the team that he has.
All right, so congratulations to the volleyball team. A fantastic season. Look forward to next year. Another team still winding down its season is cross country, and they had the conference championships last weekend up at Como Park, up at the golf course there, and a great showing, especially, Donny, for the men's team. They end up 7th place overall for the men, and David Feather individually 22nd place, and Aaron Haley not too far behind.
Yeah, David Feather, they needed that from him, and you know, the cross-country team does have one more meet left at the NCAA Central Regional. So to see David come back, and he didn't run real well at the Roy Griak a couple of weeks ago, and for him to bounce back and turn in a very solid performance at the MIAC to finish 22nd, just barely missed out of being honorable mention all conference. It's a solid showing for him, and I'm sure will be a little motivation as he heads into his final cross-country meet this coming in 2 weeks at the NCAA Regional in Waverly. And then Aaron Haley, you talk about, we keep talking about freshmen and how they're coming on. That's a solid performance for a freshman to turn in that kind of a time. Peter Borish had a solid time. Jake Traxler had did a nice job, and John Souchere did a nice job. All the guys we've talked about virtually all season long all had very solid performances, and a seventh place finish is very good for the Cardinal men. That's jumping up the ladder quite a few rungs, and I know Coach Barron had high expectations for this team, and I think that he's pretty satisfied with the 7th place finish. I think that he felt that they could finish anywhere from 6th to 10th. So for them to finish 7th is very good, and it gets them to about where Coach Barron expected them, and now it raises that bar, that expectation, as they head into the Central Regional in 2 weeks.
And then on the women's side, while the team finishes 12th, Katie Stoltz did a career best, a collegiate career best for her. So some of these runners were peaking at the right time.
Yeah, when you look at, we've talked all season long about Kristen Thalen and Amy Spitzmuller being the top runners for the team. To see Katie come on in, probably her biggest cross-country meet of her career, to really turn in a solid 6K time like that and lead the way for the Cardinals, that bodes well for the future, and that bodes well for the Cardinals heading into the regional and into 2012.
Right, and especially on the women's side, they're looking for some of that, for some more personal bests and some leaders to kind of step up there, and Katie was certainly a big part of that last week. So hopefully both the women and men do well this weekend at the regions. Is it this weekend or next weekend at the regionals?
It's actually in 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks. So, all right. Now let's turn to another sport ending its season. That's men's soccer. Both men and women's soccer close things up. And for the men's team, it was senior day. They was over the weekend up at St. Mary's, and unfortunately, they end with a loss. And again, scoring becoming an issue for the Cardinals there as they close out the season with that 3-0 loss to Augsburg.
Yeah, one of the hard parts about that final match is you hope that the team has some momentum or some desire as they graduate their 4 seniors and bid farewell to them. The problem is Augsburg had just as much to play for in that they were battling for a MIAC postseason berth, so they had a lot to play for and were pretty ramped up, and they're a very talented team. I talked to Coach Pete Watkins earlier this week, and he said they're a very, very good team. They've got a couple of guys who are extremely tough and were very difficult to mark and to match up against, and so obviously the outcome wasn't what he was hoping for. But in general, I think he looks at this season as kind of getting his regime in place and getting the kids to understand what he's expecting from them, and they in turn understanding a little bit about what a Coach Pete Watkins team is all about, and I think that more than anything, you use it as a learning experience, and you say, hey, you know what we need to get. Coach Watkins now can look at the recruiting trail and say, okay, here's what we need to fill. Here, we graduated 4, one of which was the goalkeeper, the Chris Williams, who played the majority of the team's games heading into the very end of the season. And, so I think he knows what he needs, and he knows what he's got to go out and get, and hopefully he'll be able to do that as they head into next year.
Well, and I know for a fact that Pete has already been doing that. I've seen a number of his recruits come onto campus, so he's been working that recruiting piece of it very hard, and it's difficult to do in season, but at the same time, you have to get a head start on it.
Yeah, and he's no stranger to this. He took over an Aurora program that was in a very similar situation as the St. Mary's one, and he turned that around and became a conference and national contender. So no pressure, Coach Watkins, but we expect the same from you here. But, that's one of the things that he thrives on. He knows he can do it. He's done it before. And, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. And that's the key. This year they were 2-13-2. Obviously, that's not satisfying to Coach Watkins or to anybody on that team. But he also knows that next year they're not going to be, 16-0. So it's a process, and now he knows what he has. I mean, he's worked a whole season with these guys and knows what they can do and knows what he needs to change. So. He knows exactly what he's looking for, and he's going to go out and get it.
Exact same situation for Neil Cassidy on the women's side. They closed out also on Saturday. It was a doubleheader, women and men on Saturday, and they lose 1-0 to Augsburg. And similar record. They close out in the conference 1-10-0 and 3-14 and overall. And so, while it was a loss to end the season, he's also hitting the recruiting piece of it very hard, and so they're already looking ahead to next year.
Absolutely, and he graduates 7 seniors, which is a lot, so he knows that he's got a lot of positions that he needs to fill no matter what. And so yeah, he's hitting the recruiting trail, and really the unfortunate person in all this is assistant coach Drew Taylor, who is really the recruiting coordinator for both the men and the women, and he is on the road. I talked to Coach Watkins just the other day, and he said that Drew will be on the road for like 8 straight days, following sports up in the Twin Cities and following teams as well in the Chicago area. So he's the one that you really feel bad for, because he's doing a lot of the legwork for both Coach Cassidy and Coach Watkins as the season's wound down, and now those two will hit the trail as well. So it's a busy time for them. There's no time to sit back and relax at all. They don't even get a chance to catch their breath. As Coach Watkins said, after Saturday was over, when Sunday rolled around, it was 2012 already, and getting ready for next season.
Yeah, so recruiting is a fascinating piece just for me, because it's the things you don't see until the players are on campus and actually playing the sport. But the process that goes into it, first there's the evaluation, of course, and maybe we can talk a little bit about this with Coach Mannor later. It's evaluating, it's making that initial contract, gauging initial interest, and then following up and finally closing the deal a little bit.
Well, not only that, but it's also selling St. Mary's. You've got individuals who are probably being recruited by a number of different D3 schools, and you need to tell them, you need to convince them that St. Mary's is the right fit for them, and hopefully they can come in and make a difference for this for this program or that program. And it's definitely there's a lot more to coaching in the collegiate level than just the X's and O's and the things that happen on the practice field or on the ice or on the court. There's a lot behind the scenes that goes on, and a lot of work that not only the head coach but the assistant coach does as well.
Before we get to hockey, swimming and diving, they did participate in the St. Thomas relays over the weekend, but those were just individual scores, no team scores to report there, but they are back in action now.
Yeah, as Coach Lindquist calls it, it's kind of a fun event just to get everybody in the pool and competing. Everything is a relay competition. There are no team scores, and it's just kind of a way for everybody just to kind of compete and get together. They kick things off really for real this weekend at the Hamlin Invitational. There'll be a number of teams there. Hamlin and St. John's and St. Ben's and Augsburg will all be there. So it's much more of a competitive setting, and really will be the first chance that the Cardinals get to compete in an invitational setting against other teams.
In a few minutes, we'll bring in Terry Mannor and Sarah Gustafson from the women's hockey team. But before we do that, Donnie, men's hockey also got underway this weekend at the MIAC Hockey Showcase up in the cities at Blaine. And the Cardinals took on a couple of different opponents, St. Thomas and then St. Olaf, a couple of very close games again. And unfortunately, in that second game especially, the Cardinals lose a third period lead, which is something they had trouble with last year as well.
Yeah, 2 close games, 2-3-2 decisions. Both they came out on the short end against St. Thomas and St. Olaf. The interesting thing that the MIAC Showcase is basically getting all 9 MIAC teams together, and they play over 3 days up at the Fogarty Arena in Blaine, and all 9 games that were played were all decided by a goal or less.
Wow.
So it kind of shows you that the conference is going to be extremely tight. There's going to be a lot of competition. It doesn't matter if you're preseason #1 pick like St. Thomas was, or you're St. Mary's or Hamlin or whoever you are. Every game is going to be a battle, and we talk about that every week we're on the show, that the conference is so tough and so balanced that I think the showcase just showed that it's going to be that way again. 2 very good games, and especially considering that it's the first games of the year, and I'm sure when we bring Coach Mannor on, he'll kind of say the same thing, in that, those first couple games, it's a chance to kind of see where you're at, and you're working off some of the rust, and all you've done is practice to that point, so it's nice to get in that game situation, but it's really a good chance to evaluate and see where you're at, and when you look at 2-3-2 losses, they had a lead against St. Olaf, a 1-0 lead going into the third period. Unfortunately, St. Olaf scored 3 straight goals. The game winner really was kind of talk about unlucky, in that one of the St. Mary's defensemen, we were on the power play, and took a shot from the blue line and hit a St. Olaf defender in the shin pads, bounced out into center ice just as their player was coming out of the penalty box. He went in on a breakaway and scored. Yeah. So it was kind of an unlucky break there. But it was good, solid hockey, and I think that Coach Moore was pretty pleased with what he saw. Obviously, he would like to see the team score more than 2 goals a game, but they held the other teams to 3 goals a game, so that's pretty average in MIAC hockey. So.
And if St. Thomas is the preseason #1, they only lose by a goal. They're in it the whole way there. He's got to feel good about that.
Absolutely, except I can guarantee you when we have Coach Moore on, moral victories are not in his vocabulary. So, he expects the team to do well. He expects them to play well. And yes, they played well, and yes, they kept it close, but he'd much rather be on the other side of that 3-2 decision.
Right. A couple of non-conference games this weekend, and a couple of non-conference home games for the women's team this weekend, as they're going to be taking on St. Norbert College on Friday night at 7 o'clock, Concordia, Wisconsin University at 2 o'clock Saturday afternoon. Both of those games will be right here on HBC Channel 25. And when we come back, we'll talk to head coach Terry Mannor and his goaltender, Sarah Gustafson. That's coming up next here on the Cardinals Nest on HBC.
Eric. Good morning, John.
Good morning.
Gretchen. Great to see you.
Duke.
Hey, Chad. You lose weight?
Nope.
Big Red. Man, I love that bird.
In Antwerp, Belgium, every diamond is unique, each with its own story. Holton's Jewelry offers you the rare opportunity to be a part of that story by traveling halfway across the world to choose your diamond directly from Antwerp's famed diamond cutters. Come in now before we head overseas, and you can secure your own hand-picked diamond from the city that has made diamonds sparkle for centuries. Experience the romance of an Antwerp diamond only at Holton's Jewelry in downtown Winona.
Can I get a price check on mayonnaise and aisle 4?
It's crunch time now for Coach Scott Ballard. Time is running out. He's faced with his toughest decision today. Does he go with the regular or does he go with the low fat?
Justin, I think you gotta go with the low fat here. When it comes to your health, you just cannot be too cautious. But
there's a lot of fiber in those, so you want to be careful.
Guys, are you serious? Our season hasn't even started yet.
I'm here shopping.
Thank you. Biscuit in the basket? Yes!
College game day rolls on to East Alabama. Boise is preserved to the White House, and it is a sight to see.
Coming up on College game day.
That's the most science we've ever seen. Yeah.
How can you pick against LSU?
This offense continues to develop.
Not so fast, my friend.
Who wins the game? Is there any question at all?
What was I thinking?
The Badgers with the upset.
Who's getting carried away?
College Game Day, built by the Home Depot. Saturdays at 9 a.m. on ESPNU and at 10 a.m. on ESPN.
And welcome back to the Cardinals Nest on HBC. Dean Beckman, Donny, Nadeau, joined now by Terry Mannor, the head coach for the women's hockey team at St. Mary's, and Sarah Gustafson, the sophomore goaltender. So welcome, Terry and Sarah. And
Thank you.
Sarah, let's start with you. You're from Esco, Minnesota. Sophomore this year. Tell us about Esco, how you got started with hockey, and how you ended up at St. Mary's.
Well, I started off with hockey when I was in kindergarten. I brought home a little flyer to my mom. She looked at my dad and she goes, "This is not happening right now." Well,
it happened eventually,
It happened. I was a forward for a while before I was a goalie, though. I've only been playing goalie for about 7 years. But, yeah. And Esco's a little town, so we had to combine 3 schools, Cloquet, Esco, and Carleton, to make a hockey team.
Okay, great.
It's like a little town.
But it
little
worked, and obviously you succeeded there.
Yep.
You're succeeding here. How did you land at St. Mary's, and what's your major here?
I'm a bio major, and Coach Mannor kind of called me up one day and was like, "So, have you heard of St. Mary's before?" I was like, "No, I haven't." And then one of the assistant coaches from before came and saw me play against Elk River, and they were really pleased and gave me a couple calls after that and a couple more calls after that.
Yeah, good. Well, and Terry, it's a good example of that recruiting process we talked about in the previous segment. It's about identifying not only team needs, but also just individual skills that some high school players have that you think might fit the needs of your team. And and here we have Sarah. So, so maybe talk just quickly about that recruiting process and how you go to evaluate current team needs and how whether or not that factors into the players that you recruit.
It most definitely factors into it. You know, as far as like how many defensemen do you have returning? How many forwards do you have returning? How many left-handed players do you have? How many goalies, for instance? And it's just a matter of getting out there, watching games, creating contacts. Hockey is a very, very small world compared to all the other sports. There's far less hockey players out there than there are baseball players, soccer players. So it's very, very small knit. So you're going to have 10 schools going after the same group of kids. So it's finding that niche as far as what the students want out of their institution. I always tell them to choose a school first and foremost. You're a hockey player 2, 3, 4 hours a day. You're a student 20, 21 hours a day. The degree is going to get you a paycheck. Hockey's not going to. I've lost kids because of that, because they love the hockey aspect, but they chose another school. But at the same time, I get kids because I'm straight up honest with them about it. So.
Good.
Sarah, talk a little bit. Last year as a freshman, you split time as a goalie. Right now, you know, first 2 games in, you've played both. How much of an adjustment has it been coming from high school to your freshman year, and then from your freshman year now to your sophomore year?
Oh, every year is different, for sure. High school, it was fun. We didn't have 2 straight games in a row. You know, we'd have the week games, and the freshman year, last year, it was difficult because I'd split games with Kay Collier, and it's hard to live up to her. I've known her for a while, but it was different. And college is a whole nother level than high school. And now this year, playing 2 straight games in a row like I did last weekend, it was difficult. I don't even remember the last time I played 2 straight games. It was hard.
All right.
But it was challenging in a good way.
Sure. And Coach, you're off to a 0-1-1 start. So tell us about the first 2 games and your assessment of the team play.
You know, they were sloppy, and I expected that. You always expect that. The first game was a good game. It was a good back and forth game. No team really held dominance over the other. I was disappointed that we gave up a shorthanded goal. I mean, that's unacceptable. The second game, we dominated the first 20 minutes. I'm not even sure how much they were in our zone. I warned the team in the locker room halfway, you know, that Lake Forest is going to come out on fire, and they did. But the nice part about it was every goal they scored on the weekend was a result of a mental mistake. It wasn't a result of a physical mistake. It was a result of a mental mistake in front of Sarah. So those are very fixable things. And it gave me a feeling of what we need to work on. You know, we returned 5 of our 6 defensemen, so I hadn't been doing a lot of one-on-ones in practice. Well, the game showed me that that was a mistake. You know, we needed to do that. So we spent a good 30, 40 minutes the other day just on one-on-ones. So, but overall, it was a good weekend.
Very veteran team. You didn't lose a lot from last year. You've got your top scorers back. Your top, you know, like you said, you got 5 or 6 defensemen. You got one of your top goalkeepers back. There's a lot of drive in this team in terms of expectations and goals. Correct?
Well, very much so. You know, our first practice, you know, 15 minutes into it, I told them missing playoffs is not acceptable. Now, getting there is going to be very difficult, simply because our conference is so tight. You know, we were talking about the men earlier, 2 1-goal. All the games in that showcase are 1-goal games. Ours is going to be the same way. But again, it's cleaning up the mental errors. And last year we missed playoffs because of mental errors. 3 weeks left in the season, we're in 2nd place. We end up in 6th place. So that's how tight the conference is.
Talk about it from a player standpoint, Sarah. Obviously, you know, Coach Mannor just told everybody, you know, that not making playoffs is unacceptable. Does that put any extra pressure on you, or are you guys in that same boat of being driven by that desire to get to the playoffs?
Oh, I want to make nationals, for goodness sakes. I mean, that pressure is always going to be there. I want to have that pressure on me every single game, whether it's a non-conference game or not. I have that goal, and I'm sure the rest of the whole team does. You know, we want to make playoffs. We want to win playoffs. We want to go all the way. And I think it's nice that Coach Mannor keeps on reiterating that we have to make playoffs. It's not acceptable. And reminds us every day about it. It's going to just keep driving us even more in practice and in games.
And too, you talked earlier about differences between high school, college. I think expectations, you know, part of those differences. Now, Sarah, this weekend, of course, your games against St. Norbert, Concordia, Wisconsin, will be right here on HBC. I'm sure the team is motivated to get that first win, especially on the home ice. So it should be a lot of fun this weekend.
Oh, for sure. It's going to be a blast, and hopefully we get a lot of fans out there, and that always helps us boost our energy and everything. We should have it there in the first place, but it's just another confidence boost.
Coach, talk a little bit about these first 4 games. You know, you don't open conference play until next weekend when you've got Hamlin. Do you really, how much emphasis do you put on the wins and losses in these 4 games, or is it more about getting better?
I think it's more about getting better. Obviously, you always want to win. You know, any coach who doesn't want to win every game, there's something wrong with him or her. But I'm more focused on getting ice time for everybody, playing different people in different situations and seeing what we can get out of them, getting more experience across the board. But it's basically cleaning up what you need to clean up, seeing what our systems are doing, seeing our role in the defensive zone. But it's, again, I want to win, but I'm playing more to get better for next weekend.
Talk about the leaders of this team. Who does Sarah, who do people look to kind of lead the way as you guys make this drive to the conference tournament?
You know, I think our leadership is spread across the board. We vote on captains just because NCAA rules mandate that we have C and 2As, but I don't utilize them in such a way. I think our senior class in general are all leaders. Aaron Stenseth as a junior is very much a leader. Haley Coolset as a sophomore. You know, again, I think we have a lot of leadership across the board, which is nice because then it doesn't shoulder on one person.
And Sarah, from a player standpoint, I think one of the nice things about that philosophy is that what it tells the players is you need to lead yourself, and if you do that and if everybody does that, we're going to come together as a team.
Right, it's kind of like a domino effect. And it's nice because we do have so much depth in our team. Like, everyone can be a leader, and it can always show. I mean, it's not just the seniors, it's not just the juniors. I mean, some of the freshmen are even stepping up, like Bree. She's doing great, and it's nice to see that, like, new faces coming in, they just want it just as much as the seniors do.
All right, Sarah Gustafson and Terry Mannor from the women's hockey team, thanks for being on the show. Good luck this weekend and, of course, throughout the season. And remember, speaking of this weekend, we'll have both of their games this weekend right here on HBC Channel 25, 7 o'clock on Friday night and also 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. So it should be an action-packed hockey weekend right here on HBC, 7 o'clock Friday night, 2 o'clock Saturday afternoon. That's going to do it for the Cardinals Nest. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in again next week for another Cardinals Nest right here on HBC.